In this last crash course project, we're going to design this one. And this is basically completely from scratch right within Photoshop. And it's a lot quicker one. I just wanted to show you a different style of what you can do with Photoshop for the same purpose of promoting this meditation class that we're designing for. We're going to go back here to our project. I'm going to click the artboard title up there, which gets us into the artboard tool. And then I'm going to go ahead and just add another project down below this one. I can go ahead and move it sort of in the middle so that if we want to see all three at the same time, we can zoom out and do that. Now we have this artboard 3. We have our layers organized in our layer panel, and let's get going. The first thing we're going to do is add a solid color in the background. I have sort of like this peachish pink in the background. For the other one, maybe a little bit more orange, something like that. We always can change that later on. Next, what I'm going to do is add a shape. So I'm going to take the rectangle tool. The fill color, I'm going to start with this peach by just selecting it, but now go to the color picker and just make it a lot lighter of a color, something like this. And with that, I'm going to just click and drag. I can hold the shift button down and that locks this tool into creating a square, which is what I want now. So I'm going to create this square. It's not going to be centered yet, but I will do that in just a second. And now I can take in these corners and round them like so. Now with this layer selected, and if I go back to my move tool, I can actually center this to this artboard. And I think it's a little bit dark, so what I'm actually going to do is go into the color, which you can quickly do for a shape layer by just double clicking this color here in the layer panel and just make it a little brighter. All right, let's zoom in here just a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to create some sort of illustrated cartoon flat icon type person sitting and doing a meditation pose. But I am not an illustrator. I'm not a good artist that way. But now with the Gen AI features, we can do that right here. So I'm going to use the lasso tool to just create sort of a generic blob of space where Photoshop can create a meditating person. And the reason why I did that instead of just created a big square or circle or whatever is because I don't want Photoshop to fill in this entire design with it. I want it to be relatively the same shape that I want the final design to be in. And the prompt I might use for this is a single flat cartoon design of a lady meditating. And let's see what that brings up. All right, we got a couple options, so let's go in here and see if there's one that we like. And I actually kind of like this one. Now, if we want some specifics, we can do something different. So let's go in here and add to the prompt. She should be wearing a peach-colored shirt and green pants. Her hair is tied up in a bun. And now we have 3 other options. Now, again, if we like one of these options, but we want some variations, we can go into one of these options. Say we like this one, and we can click these dots and say generate similar. And maybe one of these is exactly what we're going for. So now we have that lady sitting there. Now, because our background is the gray, we can move this person around. Remember, if you want to move it around to a spot where the background's different, we would have to probably place it beforehand or draw our lasso selection area beforehand, or we can go in here and edit the layer mask, which would be pretty simple for this layer. Now I want to go in here and add these little stars here. So the way that I did that was I actually took my ellipse marquee tool and I just added some circles, and I shift clicked and dragged to create multiple little circles here. You can do however many you want. And similarly, I'm going to prompt, which you can also prompt here in the properties panel instead of down here in the contextual taskbar. Flat cartoon, stars and sparkles. And we have a few options, which is pretty cool. Maybe we're happy with these 2 stars that it created at the top, but not the bottom one. We can quickly go in here with our brush in the layer mask. And remember, we can erase these with our black brush. And then if we want to select these ones and copy them, here's a cool trick using the clone stamp tool. So in these little practices, you're learning a lot of new stuff. The first thing we need to do is take a reference for what we want to clone. So I'm actually going to select our stars layer, option click that star, and now it has that selected as what I'm going to paint. And I'm going to paint it, I could paint it on this layer or I could paint it on a new layer. I'll just paint it on a new layer. And so now we have this new layer, if I turn these other layers off, of just this star. That's just a quick way to copy something. Now you also could have, if I just taken my rectangle marquee tool and copied this and then pasted it, and it would paste it in a new layer that we can now move, and I can resize it. I can option click it, and that is another way to do that. The clone stamp tool works better if it's a more complicated image, a photo, or something that you want to copy. Maybe you want to copy some sort of tree that's in the background or something and blend it in. We'll look at the clone tool more in detail in the full course. But either way, we can copy these stars and add a few of them so it's a little bit more balanced. Now note though, if we make these stars bigger, we're going to start to lose resolution. See how you can see that? So you want to make sure that you're keeping it about the same size or smaller. Cool. So that's looking pretty good. So now we just have to add our text. So we have our text tool. I'm going to speed this up because you've already seen me create text before. Notice how I use 2 different font choices, one for the website and one for the regular text. I would say that 2 fonts maximum per design is ideal for websites and core information like that you want to be very legible. I like to use a more sans serif font like Open Sans, something where it doesn't have these serifs. We'll talk more about font choice and fonts in the full course as well. The one thing I added to this design is this little line right here, and that is under our shape tool. So if I take the line tool and I just click and drag, notice how it's kind of going up and down, but if I just want a perfectly straight line, I can hold the shift key down and it kind of locks it there. Now I can go in and I could change the color of this line. This line is pretty thin though, so to change the line width, let me go in and where's this? It's hard to select this layer sometimes. Let's go in here, delete this line. Back in the line tool, I can change the weight of the line. So this is one way you could change sort of the thickness of the line. And so now I have this line that's relatively thin. I can center it by going back to our move tool and then aligning it to the center of our project. Now I do want to make this probably the same color that I've used before, maybe for my text down below, something like that. Looks good. Now, if you quickly want to adjust the width of this line, you could also do this through the stroke option, but the stroke is actually adding a stroke to the existing line, so the color is going to be different. So let me go back here again, change this stroke, and so this allows you to do that. And so that's a quick way to change the width of this line, but it's actually applying a stroke around the line. All right, so now we have our 3 designs. Let me show you how to export these and use the artboards feature. So if I go to File, Export, Export As, now we have these options for selecting all the artboards. We can adjust the file settings for each one if you have want them to be different, if you need different formats, or if you want them all the same, we can choose export, choose where you want to save it in your documents. And now we have these saved and exported. And this is where the naming of the artboard might make sense to change, because you can rename each artboard to whatever you ultimately want it to save as, and it will be the quickest way to save it with that name. Thank you so much for joining me for this crash course section of the class. I hope by now you feel fairly confident being able to jump into Photoshop, start designs, and do a lot of things. Now, throughout the rest of the course, you're going to learn everything that we covered in this crash course and more tenfold. There's so many more tools, techniques, things that I didn't cover here, and I think that you should continue with the course. One thing to note is that this crash course was created with one of the latest versions of Photoshop, CC 2025. A lot of the rest of the course was created with previous versions. The technique, the process, it's going to be very similar to what you do now with the latest version of the class. But I do want to mention that because you might jump to the next lessons and be like, hey, Phil, this looks a little bit different. The interface colors and things are a little bit different. Do not worry about that. The process for creating designs and using Photoshop is still the same. And if there are any important changes or updates to Photoshop, I often add new lessons or updates to those parts of the course. As I mentioned before too, I love seeing the designs and things you create with Photoshop. So please share them on social media, tag me in them at Phil Ebener or my Video School brand accounts on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you post your work. And if you haven't done so yet, please leave a rating and review for this class. You can always update it later. These reviews help me know exactly what you as a student like about my courses best, so that I can keep making my courses better and better. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the rest of the class.